Josiah was only 8 years old when he became king of Judah. He inherited a kingdom tainted by idolatry, corruption, and spiritual decay. His father, Amon, and grandfather, Manasseh, had led Judah into deep sin, filling the land with altars to false gods and desecrating the temple of the Lord. Though Manasseh repented late in life, the damage had been done, and Judah was teetering on the brink of divine judgment. Despite this dark legacy, Josiah was different. From a young age, he displayed a heart for God, unlike the kings who had come before him. At 16, while still a teenager, he began seeking the Lord earnestly, desiring to follow him with all his heart. By the time he was 20, he took bold action. He launched a sweeping campaign to rid Judah of its idolatry. Josiah traveled throughout the land, tearing down high places of worship to Baal and Asherah, smashing idols, and burning the bones of false priests on their own altars as a sign of complete desecration. He did not stop at Judah alone. He extended his reforms into the northern kingdom of Israel, which had already fallen to Assyria, purging the land of its pagan practices. When he was 26, Josiah turned his attention to repairing the temple of the Lord, which had been neglected for years. During this restoration project, the high priest Hilkiah made a discovery that would change everything: a long-lost scroll of the law, likely the book of Deuteronomy. This discovery was monumental, as it contained God's commandments, warnings, and promises for Israel, revealing just how far Judah had strayed. When the scroll was read aloud to Josiah, he was devastated. He tore his robes in grief and realized the depth of Judah's sin. The curses written in the law made it clear: disaster was coming. God's wrath was upon the nation for generations of disobedience. Knowing that he needed divine guidance, Josiah sent his officials to inquire of the Lord. They sought out Huldah, the prophetess, who confirmed their fears. God's judgment on Judah was unavoidable. The sins of the people had gone too far, and exile was certain. However, because Josiah had humbled himself, God promised that he would not live to see the destruction. He would die in peace before the calamity struck. Rather than accepting Judah's fate passively, Josiah intensified his reforms. He gathered all the people of Judah, from the least to the greatest, and read the book of the law aloud to them. Standing before them, he renewed the nation's covenant with God, pledging to follow his commandments with all his heart and soul. Josiah's reforms were unprecedented. He removed every trace of pagan worship, executed idolatrous priests, and destroyed shrines that had stood for centuries. He cleansed the temple of all objects dedicated to foreign gods and even defiled the valley of Ben Hinnom, where children had been sacrificed to Molech. He commanded that the Passover, which had been neglected for generations, be celebrated once again, leading the people in a festival that had not been observed with such devotion since the days of the judges. His efforts were extraordinary, but they could not erase the consequences of past generations. God had already decreed Judah's downfall, and Josiah's righteousness, while delaying judgment, could not prevent it entirely. Josiah's reign came to an abrupt and tragic end. When Pharaoh Necho of Egypt marched northward to aid the Assyrians in battle against Babylon, Josiah attempted to intercept him at Megiddo. Despite Necho's warning that he had no quarrel with Judah, Josiah insisted on fighting. In the battle that followed, Josiah was fatally wounded by archers. His servants carried him back to Jerusalem, where he died. His death was deeply mourned by the people. Even the prophet Jeremiah lamented him, recognizing that Josiah had been a beacon of righteousness in a dark time. After his passing, Judah quickly fell back into corruption, and within a few decades, Jerusalem was destroyed by Babylon, just as God had foretold. Josiah remains one of the most remarkable kings in Judah's history. He was a leader who sought God wholeheartedly, a reformer who restored true worship, and a man who stood against the tide of idolatry even when destruction was inevitable. His life teaches that obedience to God matters, even when the world around us is crumbling. His story stands as a powerful testament to the impact of one righteous leader in a generation of wickedness.